The objective here will be to show you several different types of reports and data emanating from classroom activities. You can see that I've got some sessions that we've delivered that we can use as examples here. I've got a early presidents session. We did 9 questions and the comprehension was 67. I've got a homework session, so this is going to be an example of data coming from Engage and Learn. I've got a team activity that we've got here, and this will be an example of data emanating from response technology. I have a rubric activity that we'll be looking at that the teacher has done either with the Assist app and or using the Tap It mode within the Plus software. And then finally we'll look at some data that's kind of been pre-built, and we'll look at some assessments that we're going to aggregate and that has standards built in, etc. So let's first look at an example here from early presidents, and this again could have just been a review, and so we see that the score on this particular activity was 67. We can look at an item analysis on this, and we can see that the various students had some problems with question number 1, and then they also had problems with question number 6. So the major issues on this particular test was question number 1 and question number 6. And we can see that how the various students did on that. You can export this to a CSV file. You can look at this in a variety of ways. You can look at it by points. We can look at an item analysis on this, so we can see the items. So you have a variety of views of this particular activity. Now this particular activity was a little review, and we didn't have any standards, so there's not a standards analysis on this. And so that's kind of a quick overview of this. You can see the students and how their scores lined up. We can see that Ryan Howard had real problems on it, and so did Dirk Nowitzki. Josh Hamilton really did well on it. We can look at student feedback. So again, you can see which questions cause problems for which students and create a PDF from that. And so that kind of gives you a walkthrough of this particular example in terms of an American history activity. So if I click on it, I basically decided not to look at it any further. This is an example of basically an Engage and Learn activity, and certainly you can produce tags associated with this, so that if you wanted to just look at and see if you had homework, if you tag this particular assessment or lesson with a homework tag, then shoot, it'll come up for you in this mode. So you have the ability to tag, and that's kind of nice to do, because you can tag some of them as homework. You may tag some of them as small group team activities, and you can basically look at those as a group as you accumulate these over time. So let's go in and look at this quickly. This data came in from Engage and Learn. So you've got a variety of formats and technologies that can contribute to it, but once you get it in, it basically is of the same format. So there's no use kind of spending a lot of time on this. You see the same sort of capabilities, the exporting and the student feedback on the questions. And so again, you've got a feel for the results. This particular one did not have a standard, so you can see that there's no data to display. So an example of data coming from a homework assignment. This is an assignment that we did, or learning activity that we did in class with the response pads with a 6-team roster. So we did a little geometric formula review We did 7 questions, and the comprehension was 90%, and this could have been a competitive type scenario. We did have a good comprehension. The various teams, this is how they did, so we had all the teams performing relatively in a relatively good fashion. Certainly you have the ability to go in and look at the student feedback or the team feedback, and again view the various questions that provided problems. So question 3 was the most difficult question in the mix of questions. So that's an example of basically a team activity resulting in a comprehension score. There are examples throughout where you probably wouldn't take this data to a grade book. It's more of a rapid formative assessment type activity, but it's nice to have. In this particular case, you probably provided formative type feedback as you were executing this activity, since it was a synchronous activity that you executed. Got an example down here of an oral assessment. This really comes from one of our users in San Antonio, this particular assessment. It's six questions or 6 rubrics. The class scored a 78 on it, and so it'll have a little different format than the others. You still get a comprehension score. When you look at the student analysis, you still have a score for the students, but when you start looking at the student feedback, it's going to be by points. So we can see that the first rubric was worth 38 points, and here's how the various students did on it. Dirk Nowitzki was the only one that got all 38 points. 18 points, 9 points, 18, 9, and 8. So six different rubrics. This particular one could have been scored with assist, or it could have been scored by having the students come up to your desk and use plus and the rubric slider within plus to basically construct each of the scores for each of the 6 rubrics for the student. So there's a rubric type activity. No standard here either, so we don't have any feedback with respect to the standard. So an example of a rubric could have been done again with assist and the slider on assist, or it could have been done straight from the computer using plus. Now, I'd like to kind of switch horses here a minute and show you some aggregation capabilities. So here's 4 particular assessments, and I'm going to aggregate those, and this basically brings into play the ability to do your value-added model, value-added measure, or value-added model. So there's the first assessment that we did, and it's a 5th grade beginning assessment in math. My class, Garner's class, had a 77 on that. There's the second assessment on numeration, the third assessment on addition and subtraction number sense, and finally an addition and subtraction, or adding and subtracting to solve problems. So we've delivered 4 assessments. We have the ability to basically look at that in a student analysis perspective, and so we can see how we did as a class. So I'm beginning to see a profile now for my class that says I started with a 77, a group that had a 77 on the beginning assessment. I'm seeing some progress. So that's my value-added analysis. If you have standards, you can see the progress by standards. So there's a standard there, and you can see that by student. So this particular student had those various scores. We can look at the entire class in a value-added model. So, for example, we can see that Roxanne Livingston started out with a 98. It's going to be hard for her to go much higher than that, although she did have 2 100s that she followed that up with, and then she had a 93. But what you're really looking for here is to reduce the reds. So these reds show negative progress. It could be that this particular student at this particular point, maybe they missed some class. So there's a way to look at that and say, hey, there's a reason that's a negative 17. However, whatever it was overcome because here's 293s. So you can see the progress there. What you really want to see is not very many reds out here in this as you go out on the column. So you may start with your beginning assessment with a whole group of students that come in below where you want them to be, and your goal is to move them into the other categories. So here's the very first assessment. You see you've got them moved into green, and there's the third one, there's the fourth one. Okay. So that's an example of using the aggregation part of this, and basically now I can move back to my footprint and I've got that particular session. I can also look at these by themselves, so I don't have to aggregate them. So I can just go in and look at this second topic that we did. I can see how my class did. This was a common assessment. I can compare it against the other teachers at my campus, and if it's done district-wide, I can compare it against the district average. So this first chart gives you the ability to look at your students compared to other students. Now, that doesn't show you where the rest of the teachers started, and that's key to the value-added growth model. You need a starting point for every class, and then you have a true measure of the growth that you're adding to your students. And it could be that your students are in a particular mode or have particular characteristics that aren't great for growth. You may just have a class that's not going to grow a lot, and as you maximize that, you may do a great job, but over a year they may not grow at a rate that another class grows at. So you don't want to basically use those numbers as absolutes. There are a variety of parameters that need to be in play there before one would use the value-added growth for a particular class as a gauge for the value of the teacher, or to be more than a component, for it to be a large component of a teacher evaluation. And that's why this particular model that we have is fantastic for this. You can see from the standards analysis on this that we give you the standards that have been covered in this particular assessment. In this particular assessment, we covered 5 standards. We give you the frequency. So this particular standard, E, frequency was 1. We only delivered 1 question on the standard. D, we only delivered 1 question on the standard. C, we only delivered 1 question on the standard. But now B and A, we did several questions on the standard. So these are the main components of that particular assessment, and these are kind of subsidiary or complementary to the main components. And of course, in the legend down here, we have the various standards and how they relate. Always print them, so you can print and export to a CSV, and some of these are exportable to a PDF. So that's an overview of using the footprint or the reports part of PLUS to basically look at your rapid formative assessment outcomes, and to look at summative assessment outcomes also. So this is a tool for looking at your outcomes from a variety of our platform technologies that form the Growing Student Success Daily platform.